Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan McNeil, and this is the Builder by Day podcast. Today, I'm having a conversation with Reg Manzer from the Elev8 podcast. Reg, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. You and I have met before with the evening that you guys came here to do the election live stream.
Yeah.
So we had a chance to meet, briefly, then have a bit of conversation. But I figured it'd be a good idea to bring you in. You and I can kind of just toss it around and
yeah, for sure.
Whatever comes to mind.
That was an interesting night, that election night.
I was watching from home. I was tuning in. As you know, like my wife and I came and wanted to get a chance to meet you guys and say hello, and then good luck. And then we went home and I had it pulled up and I was watching you guys kind of do your thing. And it was that must have been a long night. You guys didn't get out of the show, like 2:00 in the morning?
We didn't get out until 2:00 in the morning, but the big thing was the fact that the weirdness that was happening with YouTube and the fact that, so basically what happened election night, all the political channels on the left and right side of the fence were all getting hit for some reason. We know Juno News was having a hard time keeping their stream up because Jasmine was here and she's like, I can't get in. I can't even reach them. There was, I'm trying to remember the other ones. Northern Perspective was also having troubles with theirs. Apparently their stream got completely taken over and taken down and then brought back up again. Wow, really? And then we couldn't buffer to save our lives. So it was like, everything was delayed. It was just painful to watch. And then it was funny because even the CBC, that they were getting the feed directly from Elections Canada, all of a sudden you just watched and all of their election count went to 0 on the screen for some reason.
Oh, really?
What is happening? And the reason being is that their feed got hit and they had to just basically bring up a static image of the seat counts at the same time as like trying to figure out how to get that Elections Canada feed to come back. And it was just like all this weirdness happening around election night.
Yeah.
And then next day, nobody said a word about it. It was just like as if it never happened.
Really?
We were like, what?
So nobody really never looked into it.
Nobody looked into it. Nobody really talked about it. I do know somebody at CBC that was just like, we were just told it was a glitch and then just moved on from there. And we just business as usual. So nothing to talk about, nothing to see. I was like, it's just really weird that this whole election has just been an odd thing. Yeah. I mean, we're seeing now with what we're seeing in the news, but just like from start to finish, like we haven't had a government properly sitting in place since October. And now
it's crazy, man.
And now
it's just crazy to me.
Yeah.
I just look at government as business. These are the people that we, elected. I just say hired. These are the people we hired to do a job for us. So fucking do your job.
Yeah.
Like go to work. Start by going to work, right? It's crazy to me that, what is it, 9 months now or whatever it's been?
Oh, yeah.
With no parliament. If this were a company instead of a country and all of your board members and management staff, which what these guys would be, just decided, we're just going to not bother for 9 months. The thing can run itself. Well, sort of two things happen there. You realize, what do we even need you for? Because is everything still going? Because what do you got? You're not doing anything. So what do we need you for? Right? Now, don't get me wrong. I believe there's value, of course, in politicians. They're supposed to be there representing their constituents. But man, clearly the government itself functions or dysfunctions, however you look at it, the same way whether Parliament's in or not, because they're not doing anything.
Yeah, and well, that's exactly right. That was the piece that I was thinking of too in my head. Is like, if we haven't had government sitting for that long, and it's kind of been life as usual. Not saying that that's good or bad,
right?
Because there's definitely things that need to be improved,
right?
But we still have been functioning,
right,
up until this point. And to my knowledge, there's been no deal made with Trump, which is the big reason why we needed government back so quickly, and then why we had such a quick election. To get a mandate to go talk to Trump, nothing's happened there, and so far nothing is like totally fallen apart. Why do we need them?
I know, man.
So, and that's 3 branches of government too. That's the judiciary, that's the Senate, that's the House of Commons.
Yeah.
Nobody's doing anything.
No. And it's not like there's nothing to do.
No, exactly.
There's a lot to be done, right? Like there's a lot going on. And it's just insane to me that they're just, and that'll be summer vacation. And so they come back, September?
Yes. Yeah.
And they'll come back for a couple of weeks or something.
Late September too.
Yeah.
That's the other part of it. The thing that it kind of draws attention to me is that it makes the average citizen realize how much the provincial government is actually in control of your daily life. When you think about all the things that, you need to continue, like garbage is municipal, electricity rates are in a lot of provinces governed by the provincial government, or, whether there's exploration going around your house or there's a highway being built that you need to, all these things are provincial provincial entities or healthcare, education.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, it's like Ottawa has this weird kind of relationship with the provinces and their jurisdictions. And yet it seems like without Ottawa in place, we've been just fine.
Yeah.
So,
or at least no different than
no different. Yeah,
than if
exactly.
they were there, right?
And it kind of, you look at, well, when Ottawa did intervene, it seems like things only got worse.
Yeah.
So maybe leave those provincial mandates to the provinces to run, which is basically just quoting Danielle Smith.
Right.
So, which is fun watching exactly what's happening in that province. But
yeah, do you find that fun to watch? I find that fun / stressful / I mean, there's just a lot of uncertainty in this country. I think, like, I think at the end of the day, if I look at it from somebody who's, are you from here? I'm from Nova Scotia. Are you from Nova Scotia?
I'm from New Brunswick originally.
Okay.
I was born in New Brunswick. My family's all in the valley,
Okay.
Down in Digby area. And I moved to Nova Scotia in 2009. So
okay.
we're getting on almost that breaking point of been in Nova Scotia longer than New Brunswick. But
okay.
But my daughter was born here and my wife was born in Ontario.
Okay.
So,
but you're married. You're a maritimer.
Yeah.
You're a maritimer.
Oh, yeah. It's New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI. We're exactly the same.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
You
right?
Go to any of those places and you're like,
that's right.
Yep, it's the Maritimes.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. I'm not familiar with, all of the provinces. I've been to Alberta and I've been to Ontario and I've driven through Quebec. I've been to Quebec, I guess, Montreal and Quebec. So, Quebec City, Montreal, whatever. But, that's how I look at it nowadays as a business owner and a Canadian and someone that's been here my whole life. It's the uncertainty that it's unsettling. Normally, like you don't have to think this much about the future of your country.
Yeah.
You just want to pay attention to your own life and organize yourself. But these external factors, these things that like I think everyone should just be able to go through their life and handle their business and not have to think about what might be happening in the big picture around them that's going to have significant impact on them, especially as a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't say especially, but particularly there are things that, as a business owner, there are other considerations. You start thinking about things like, where's this country going from a taxation perspective and from a business investment perspective and so on. There's just a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, totally. I think why I'm a little less jarred by all the uncertainty is because I feel like that's just been the norm now for the past 10 years. And I haven't lived a life long enough to have had that stability for so long. I mean, we started to see the wheels come off in kind of the end of the Harper era when he started removing the funding for the scientists, or he took away the long form census, and people were like freaking out about what that would do. And then they ushered in Trudeau being like, oh, he's a brand new face. Right. And then we saw all the changes with all that, and then scandal after scandal after scandal. So I feel like it's almost kind of been like a build up, a slow burn of uncertainty, and then you get punched in the face with COVID. Yeah. And so it's just kind of, I'm looking at this as almost like a little bit of a reprieve from what happened before. But I totally agree with you as far as the provinces go. I think that if you look at history and you say, what has happened the last time a province, threatened to, leave the country and destroy the unity of the country, as the left will tell you. Basically, they held a referendum. It came very, very close. And then they got a whole bunch of special privileges and special acknowledges, and were now treated as a nation to nation in name only. I shouldn't say in name only. They have like their own QPP and things like that. So I think that we're probably going to see a repeat of that. What's old is new. I think you're going to see Alberta kind of create its own systems of governance that are going to negotiate with Ottawa the same way that Quebec does. Mm-hmm. And they hold the money, right? So they can do it. And if they get enough folks on the ground, and if the left keeps angering the Albertans, I don't know if you saw that Jan Arden post. It's like, how to win friends and influence people. Oh, tell them they're all idiots and weirdos. Like, that's gonna work. Exactly. Good job.
I know, it's crazy, man.
I don't think Alberta is going to leave. That's my prediction. I think that what we're going to see is that Alberta kind of get its own special status.
That makes sense.
Get a whole bunch of really favorable things. And I think that you'll see them really become prosperous, and basically the other provinces just start emptying out their young people. We already saw that back, 10 10, 15 years ago,
Right.
young people heading to Alberta, go west for prosperity.
Right.
And I just think you'll see that on an accelerated rate.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. I mean, I'm in the construction business. So for me to see people leaving the Maritimes to go west for better opportunities is nothing new.
Mm-hmm.
And I would agree with you. It's hard to get your head around the idea, or even say, I don't realistically think if I had to bet on it, I would say, well, nobody's going to be separating, but I would expect, like you said, some things are going to change, but perhaps not a whole province separating and leaving. But what gives me concern, as a citizen, business owner, and so on, is that even if a province in particular doesn't leave, sure enough, but individuals are leaving.
Yeah.
And like, I know a number of them.
Yeah.
And some of them are taking a significant amount of money and business with them, their own business. And that's a vacuum that's going to suck from the bottom. And it's going to be, as people leave and money leaves with them, it's going to create, and jobs leave and so on. It's going to create a problem. And I have years ago, I was back I can't remember now if this was like 20, I meant to look it up and I forgot to look it up. It was somewhere in the 2010 to 14 range, somewhere in there. I had actually looked at starting to do some real estate investment in the US. And so I was back and forth to Florida on a semi-regular basis of just vacationing, and had a buddy of mine had a house there, and we're kind of back and forth, and you take the family on vacation. And anyway, I'd gone through the process of actually setting up business and bank account, get your EIN and all those things to be able to start just doing some business, not move there, but just do similar to what I do here, real estate investment, building, flipping houses, whatever I decided to do, but in Florida. And one thing led to another. I got busy with some other stuff, and I just sort of didn't end up doing anything with it. So I shut it all down, but now I'm back to in the process of like setting it all back up again.
Yeah.
If for no other reason, just to be able to sort of start to diversify and explore what I think about doing business on the other side of the border and get a better feeling. Like, I'm not about to pack up and move my life and leave the country, but I, like many people are going, I'm going, okay, I'm going to just start to see what's going on elsewhere.
Yeah.
In case I have to do something elsewhere. And that may not mean moving, but it might mean doing business somewhere that is more business friendly, or in addition to what I do here. So
yeah, well, it's interesting because like I even look for myself. I have a master's degree. I have years of experience in healthcare. My work right now that I do, I work with companies who want to innovate in healthcare systems, and I look at placing them within the healthcare system. And one of the epicenters for that kind of work is out of North Carolina. It's called Research Triangle Park, and there are multiple billions of dollars from investors all over the world run through that place. Okay. And doing exactly the same kind of work that I'm doing.
It's a lovely place, North Carolina.
It looks pretty nice.
It's an awesome place, man. I've been there. It's like, it's on my list of places I would definitely live.
Yeah. And looking at it, and I'm like, okay, well, talking to friends who are actively in the process of moving their businesses and themselves to the States, and even friends who are not physically moving to the States, but just moving their businesses there. Like you said, people incorporating their business now in Nevada or in Wyoming, or all these places that are more favorable, going, I'm saving so much money by doing that. And I'm looking at this going, okay, well, if we keep pulling businesses out of the Canadian economy, and that revenue is now technically being collected in the States and being taxed in the States, what does that mean for everybody else? It just means that more personal income tax is going to have to come out to cover the costs. And
that's right.
We saw that Canada Post is now striking, and they're effectively bankrupt. So where are we funding?
I saw that yesterday. I didn't look into that. I'm like, what? Didn't we just go through this? Didn't we just do this a few months ago? You guys are doing this again?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
And the big push for that one is that they're trying to basically, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to get around the union, because the union has certain, they fought for certain privileges like vacation amounts or wage increases or wage structures. And they're looking at this going, okay, but Amazon is doing the same thing for a fraction of the benefit and a fraction of the price. Right. So how do we get on this? Well, we've got this union in the way. Okay, cool. Let's, make sure that this company looks as poor as humanly possible. And create kind of a situation where you can force some of these elements in, where it's hiring folks who are not unionized, then also do deliveries on the weekends and the off hours, which would be great for the consumer. I'm not denying that. Like, I think that'd be fantastic if Canada Post was at the same level as Amazon.
Sure.
But the problem is then you're going to have like a 2-tiered system within that organization. It's a crown corp. So it's going to be a mess. So that's one that I think is just going to be an absolute mess. But to get back to the point, when you look at some of these costly institutions and go, where's the money coming from? All of our businesses are heading south of the border. And then, folks are heading south of the border that would also be buying things.
Right.
Because a lot of the fastest path to wealth is entrepreneurship.
That's right.
And if you're losing your entrepreneurs and they're buying things elsewhere, not in Canada.
That's right.
It's a recipe for disaster. And we see like unemployment rate has gone up. We see that inflation is still at 1.7%, and people are celebrating that. And it's like, no, it means it's 1.7% more expensive than it was last month.
That's right.
Like, I look at all this stuff. I'm like, we're still getting more expensive, but our employment rate is, the floor is falling out of employment in Canada. You look at Statistics Canada data and look at where industry is growing, where it's declining. Every private sector has gone down, and only the publicly funded sectors have gone up. And then when you get into the granularity of like the private sectors like mining, forestry, agriculture, only those that are seeing, strategic bolstering by funds from the government are the only ones that are either growing or just staying the same.
Right.
Everything that's private, just disappearing.
Yeah. And in my world, in the housing construction business, you would think with all the talk of the housing crisis, and the fact that everyone agrees on both sides of the aisle, like it doesn't matter what your political affiliation. At this point, everyone agrees that we need more supply. That's what everybody says. We need more supply. And theoretically, I agree with that. We can debate over who the supply is for. It would be nice to know who the supply is for. It'd be nice if they would come out and say who it is that we're building these houses for. We being the taxpayer. I don't mean we being the home builder. But we can all agree we need more housing and more affordable housing. But there's this thing where it then goes on to, the narrative goes on to suggest that the reason we don't have enough housing is because we, the builders, the residential construction industry, can't build them fast enough. And in my 20 years doing it, I have never seen it slower as far as available skilled labor and trades people available. But it's not that we can't get it built, but from a housing affordability perspective, nobody's asking the private sector to build anything. Like the private sector doesn't work that way. The private sector, when it comes to residential construction, works like this. Whoever you are, whether you're an individual who has a house built, wants to have a home built, or you're a nonprofit or the government and you want to have lots of housing built, you go to the private sector and you get bids or quotes or estimates, and then you make a decision, you get something built. But nobody's doing that.
Yeah.
Nobody's coming to the private sector and say, hey guys, we need to double the amount of houses that we build and double the number of houses that we build in the country. It's unfathomable to begin with, but you would think if that were the case, every home builder out there, every qualified, experienced builder with a good reputation would have some government organization or nonprofit beating their door down to get things built. But the thing is, that's not where it's fallen down. The problem isn't that we can't get it built, that nobody's actually attempting to build anything. It's not like there are, say Carney and the Liberals' plan was to double the housing construction, right? From 250,000, which we barely ever get there, but let's call it 250 to 500,000 units, they call them.
Yeah.
500,000 units a year.
Yeah.
And if that were the case, then it stands to reason that if there was going to be twice as much demand as there ever has been, then it would stand to reason that every home builder and developer would be twice as busy as they normally are, at least with requests for things to build. But if the demand is coming from the government, social housing and so on, then, what I've always said is, well, how come the phone's not ringing with people asking, look, how come there aren't tenders out there? How come there aren't requests for proposals being put forth for the private sector to bid on and say, hey, you need 50 units built over on that patch of dirt that you have? Then tell us what you want built, and then ask for quotes and pricing, and then take the best bid and get at it. And if there's so much of it, then you would expect that nobody in the residential housing construction sector would be unemployed right now or looking for work, but they are.
That's interesting because I feel like there's a disconnect happening, and I'm not quite sure where it's at, but because everybody who's my age, I'm 34.
Mm-hmm.
And so between that age of like 25 to 35, we want houses.
Right.
Well, I love that you mentioned units because they're like, we're going to build all of these condos and apartment buildings and everything. We don't want that.
Right. We want houses.
We want houses.
That's even beyond. When they say units, they also mean 10 by 12 sheds and shelters and steel containers that they're going to put people in. Like that's units. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a home builder. When somebody says we need 250,000 more homes in this country, I picture homes. Now I do picture, of course, a great deal that's going to be apartments and condos and so on, but I don't picture steel containers and little prefabricated 4x4, 8x8 buildings that somebody has a window and a door and somebody calls it a home. Now I understand that for some people that would be transitional housing or shelter and it's necessary. But when you refer to it, if you're thinking that and you're picturing 250,000 of those every year, then we have a bigger problem to discuss there than the lack of housing. So I'm a home builder. So folks like yourself, the 25 to 34-year-olds that are saying, yeah, I'd like to buy a home someday and I need it to be more affordable. As a home builder, I'm looking and saying, I feel you. And there are ways to make it more affordable. And if we could just get the approvals to do that, then like I could start building houses tomorrow that I could sell to young people looking to buy their first home for $500,000 and less. And that's a hard thing to find these days, especially in new construction. I dare say we could probably have units that would sell probably in the 400,000, maybe even in the threes. But we have to be able to get the approval to do so. We need an approval from the government, whether it's municipality, province, it's always municipality for permits, but we need to be able to get approvals to build affordable units. And that we have to bring the cost. There's lots of talk about, we got to get rid of the taxes and the fees and so on. That's all great. But we also have to be able to recognize that there are more efficient ways to develop land and to develop housing than the required way that we have to do it nowadays with the municipalities' standards for the fact that you got to build every road like a subdivision road. You got to build this thing to what they call build it to standard. Yeah. Right? That's wildly expensive. There are also restrictions on, how long the road can be and all these different things, but there are much more efficient ways to do that already exist, that already exist all over the Maritimes you drive around. I mean, there's no shortage of, for instance, graveled roads.
Yeah.
Right? And if, everybody, of course, would love to live on a paved street, but if a gravel road was the difference between owning a home or not, you'd probably take the gravel road.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
If that meant you could buy a home for $379,900 and move in and start your family and start your life as home ownership, then just join the other tens of thousands of people in this country that live on dirt roads. It's not the end of the world.
My road turns into a gravel road.
Right.
And like there are beautiful houses on that road and nobody, like obviously they would love to have a paved road, but it's not the barrier.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And the thing is like, and I live in a fairly nice area. So like that whole side is all lakefront properties. Mm-hmm. They don't give a crap that the road is gravel. They're just happy to have a multi-million-dollar home on a lake.
That's right. That's right.
And like that's the other extreme, but that's interesting because that's the big thing that I'm looking at because I have enough skills in my back pocket that I can frame, I can sheathe, I can electrical. The only thing I don't touch is plumbing. Okay. I will not touch plumbing because I'm like, I will do all the electrical, I'll do everything else. But I was like, when you put water in there, I was like, I back away. Sure, I'm like, I've got a couple of friends who are plumbers. I'm like, come on over.
Yeah. It's probably a good idea, man. It's probably a good idea.
But I look at all that and I'm like, when you think about what was built in years past, again, what's old is new. And you think about the fact that some of these structures that they built back in the day are still standing. They're 100-year homes that are still standing. They're perfectly fine, but that you would never be able to build today.
That's right.
Or things like you said about, building on a gravel road that's, not to standard. Or the fact that houses have to have a certain amount of road frontage. And that's where you get all these weird flag lots that are built. And it's just like, would you just back off for a bit?
Yeah, that's right.
Pull out for a second because like, why is it that this house has to have, 200 meters of road frontage, yet you walk into downtown Halifax and you've got a house next to house next to house next to, and that's perfectly acceptable.
That's right.
It's like,
That's right.
I look at all this stuff, and I used to actually sit on the Community Design Advisory Committee. So they're the ones that started writing the center plan.
Okay.
And I was the youngest person there by a mile. And I just remember them being in that room, just arguing over whether the shutter on a house is included in the building envelope. And I'm like, are we really there? Like,
it's not, by the way.
It didn't get counted. But this was the argument. They're like, well, what about an awning? And I was like, oh my God, do we really need, we need a consolidated plan for this area, because you got 5 different plans and it's taking people a century to work through the legalities of these plans. And you're arguing about the plan was delayed by like 2 years or something stupid like that. Because then once it got through our committee, then it had to go through the Heritage Committee. And then when it got through the Heritage Committee, then it had to go,
this
it was just
the problem, right? This is the problem.
So many layers of folks being like, well, I need to have my say on it. Like, just get out of the kitchen and let the cooks cook.
Yeah. I mean, last week I was sitting in City Hall, and, eventually at the end, even finally had my approval for a 50-unit apartment building that I put forth for approval. I think it was late 2020 or maybe 2021. So
wow.
let's call it 3 to 4 years later.
Yeah.
But before me, there was another builder that was there who had put forth I think it's like a 30 or 35 unit seniors complex, also apartments, right? But senior specific. But they started their process in 2019. So there's 2 builders sitting in the room with all this staff and planners that we've hired to do this stuff. And we're all, between the 2 of us, we have hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in these approvals with engineering and architectural stuff and traffic studies, environmental studies. We're all ready to go, and we've been trying to get it approved. And so ultimately, these things both get approved this evening, which is great. So there is, like, say, for argument's sake, 80 more units for people to live in. But we've been trying to get them for somewhere between 4 and 6 years. That's how long it has taken. And in both cases, we're talking about what would be considered affordable housing for the people who need it most.
Yeah.
Seniors, my unit is like 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. This isn't high end condo stuff. And so there's just a real disconnect between hurry up, we need more housing. And meanwhile, the rest of us who build the housing are standing back here like, okay, let's go. I'm ready to start tomorrow. Just stamp this. Let's make it happen.
And the other part that I'm wondering about, and maybe you can shed some light into it for my own understanding, is like I was saying, like, I have the skills to build things. And there's like 2 parts to this. Like, the first part being, we were originally looking for a house. We were looking for land.
Mm-hmm.
And because we had saved up a significant down payment, we were like, okay, well, we could probably actually buy land. And just the requirements on the banks to, we have to 50% of the value of the land in order 50%. To buy it. And I was like, holy crap, like, what land are you going to get for? And we had saved up at the time like 130,000, which is a significant amount.
Yeah.
And a lot of that came from investing, and then also from money from my wife's mom passed. So we were able to take that money, invest it, and grow it. And so, like, nobody our age like had opportunity like that. And so it was only because of the, like I said, family situation, and then just luck to get to that point. And we still couldn't buy land to build a house the way that my parents did, or the way that my grandparents did. Like, my parents built their house.
That's right.
And so I'm looking at this going, okay, so I think there's a problem right at the very beginning of like accessing land. And I'm wondering, as a developer, do you run into that same kind of barrier with financing of like, how do I get the property? Then you have to sit and wait 5 years in order to get the approval to even develop the property.
Yeah, you're right. And so the answer to your question is, as a developer, the reason we don't run into exactly the same issue is that, generally speaking, you just have the cash to do what you're doing, or you have the ability to borrow. But it's no different. The banks don't loan developers any more than 50% of the value of the land anyway. So if I buy $1 million patch of land, and I've got $500,000 in cash and I need to borrow the other half, the bank will loan it to me, but at 50%. And then so imagine, for instance, if I bought a piece of land, it was $1 million, and I'm going to develop that land into, I don't know, let's say it's going to be 24 lots or something. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I spend $1 million on the land, and then I start through the development agreement process. And let's just say it's single family home lots, right? Single family lots. So I've got to build a road and power poles and all that noise. I'm in the process of doing that now. The lots were already approved. So I didn't have to go through any HRM approval. I bought these lots. They were already approved. So I had to build the road and get the power poles and lines installed, start building houses. So I purchased the land last year in mid-June. By the 1st of August, I had the road built. I still don't have any power poles. I have a house that we're drywalling that we've built on a generator because I still don't have any power poles. And I've been to the site half a dozen times now. The guy I work with at Nova Scotia Power, what they call the scoper, the guy who kind of goes to the site, real nice guy, very pleasant, happy to deal with. So we go and talk about what we're doing. And then he goes away. And then I chase him again. And then he comes back and we meet at the site again. And this is like, and so now we're going to be, in a couple weeks' time, we're going to be a year from the time I first met Nova Scotia Power on site to get the poles arranged. And I'm like a dog with a bone with it. So I was, I had anything they needed, I had it immediately. All you need, my surveyors to come out and get you some kind of report or some kind of easement register, whatever it is. I'm talking like within days. I go, oh, here you go. Here's that file that you need at Nova Scotia Power. But here we are a year later. So that's a problem. Just the way everything moves along is a problem. But when it comes to land development and buying it, I've said a couple of times before, when it comes to building your own home even, the limiting factor for most people is just the finances of it, right? Because if you had $100,000 and you found a lot for $100,000, the bank wants you to have all your money in first before they start putting money in. So you're all in and you're starting to build your house. And first of all, not many people would build their own home anymore anyway. Not many people, and when I say build it, I mean not even like you're handy. First of all, not many people are handy. Not many people are handy anymore. But in addition to being handy, not many people would even tackle sort of contracting it themselves.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't blame them. It's if you have no experience with that, it's a daunting task. Like just getting a building permit. It's just good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck getting a building permit. And nobody there's going to help you. There's nobody that you're going to call and they're going to get on the other end of the phone of the municipality. They're not going to walk you through everything you need to do. They're not going to tell you that.
Yeah.
They're going to say, come back when you have everything you need. Well, what do I need? Wow, call somebody and ask them. Like they're not going to lay it out for you. Right. And so I agree with you. It'd be nice if people could, if I had a piece of land, it would be nice if I could carve off a lot and sell it to my son or give it to my son, for instance, and then he could build his own home on the land and so on. But there's not much of that goes on as much as used to either. That process takes forever and expensive. So there's no lack of, I don't think there's any shortage of people who would like to build homes, but there are some barriers there, and finances are a big part of it.
Yeah, it makes me think too. I know one of the things you said about skilled labor. Is skilled labor necessary? There's a lot of work that I know, right from like pouring the foundation to, framing up the walls to actually like putting the house together, that you don't really need a lot of skill for. Like, I know that maybe I'll offend a lot of people on your podcast.
Yeah, but I would disagree with you 100% on this one. Maybe you're handier than you think, or maybe you're surrounded by people that are handier than you think. Because even home builders, like I've been doing it for 20 years, and many of the guys that have been with me, the tradespeople and laborers and so on, that have been with me. Some of them have been with me for 20 years. Mm-hmm. Most of them, almost all of them, have been with me for 10 plus years. So you get a good system going. They know how we want things done. And I know, we know what to expect from one another. But yeah, they definitely are highly skilled. And I would say, yes, you need skilled labor.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. I would never, not me personally, but I would never recommend to anyone to take that on themselves.
Okay.
Never.
Because I'm just looking like
disaster.
I've pulled wire before.
Sure.
Like,
again, I think you may be underestimating how your handiness compares to the average
general population. Maybe.
Yeah, I think you might be, because most people don't even know what you just meant when you said pulled wires. They don't mean by pull wires, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you sound like you're abnormally handy, which is good.
Thanks.
A couple of weeks ago, I did a podcast episode where I was like, okay, essentially, okay, the Liberals won the election. This is going to be downhill from here. So here's some things you might want to consider doing. One, you might want to think about self-employment, or at least getting a little side gig. And one of the things I mentioned is you also might want to get handier than you are. Like know how to do something, because it might get more and more difficult to find somebody to do that thing that, our parents perhaps just always did themselves, or that I grew up outside the city. I grew up in Chador. And so rural Nova Scotia in the 80s, 90s, and so on, it seemed like everybody knew a guy. Like everyone knew there was the neighborhood electrician, there was the neighborhood plumber, there was the neighborhood drywall guy, and they all just kind of called that person when they needed them. But it's not really like that anymore. And it's not like, I don't see it that way anymore anyways. Certainly not in my world. I mean, in my world, I know I have a guy for everything. Like I have a guy for everything. I say to people, one of the things that makes me at a personal level the most valuable is I have a guy for everything.
Yeah.
Everything. And not only do I have a guy for everything or a person for everything, but I have some degree of leverage in most cases to whereby at least they will take my call.
Yeah.
Right? Let's start with that. They'll answer the phone. Hey man, how's it going? Hey, I haven't heard from you in a long time, but here's what I need. And I mean everything from financial services to, the only thing I don't have is I don't have good connections in the healthcare sector. Like if I need someone to make a call for me because I need to jump the list for an MRI or something, I don't have that connection. I don't know if that exists in this country, but
not even Nova Scotia employees have that ability.
Good. I don't feel left out there.
No, I was looking at one case where there was an area in healthcare where they were like 50% on just vacancy in the needs. So it's you're not going to find a guy if I could be that guy, I would totally be that guy, but I don't even have a family doctor. So
is that right?
Oh yeah. So Nova Scotia health employees are just the same.
I shouldn't say that like as if I'm surprised.
Same way as everybody else, but
I
had a family doctor, but she ended up retiring. So, and just ever since then we didn't have one. But it's funny you say about having a guy. It's like my best friend's an electrician. So I get him to come in and look at everything I've done. And he's like, yep, good to go. And then I've got a friend who's a plumber, so he comes in and does my plumber work because I won't even touch it to begin with. And then, like I said, a lot of the other stuff I know how to do myself. But
that's one of the things when I look at explore the idea, for instance, doing some business in the U.S. or anywhere outside of Nova Scotia, but particularly in another country. That's the part that's most daunting to me. Is I'm like, oh man, I have a guy. I have someone for everything. I got to start over and find. I mean, I have at least one person, if not multiple people, for no matter what I need. Anything from real estate, construction, finance, not healthcare, cars, trucks, you name it. I have someone I can call. Lawyers, accountants, bookkeepers, all of it. House cleaners, landscapers, yard care people. I have someone I can call for all those things. And to go somewhere else and have nobody to call, to me is,
you're starting from square one.
I feel like starting over. I'm like, I don't want to do that, but I have to do it to some degree, at least. I just probably wouldn't do it. I probably wouldn't go somewhere else, like say the US or even Western Canada. I probably wouldn't go there and get down and dirty home builder stuff like I do now, where I've got to manage all the trades and suppliers and do. I would probably fish a little further upstream and be more of like an investment builder rather than a boots on the ground type builder dealing with. Like for me, I personally design and draw the home plans, and then my staff at this point now take on and build them. But I'm somebody who understands, involved in the process, from everything from designing and drawing the plans, applying for the permits, cutting trees, all the way through to hand you the keys and move in. So I know every aspect, every part of that inside and out. So, I'm what is referred to as a turnkey home builder, where we say we provide everything, right? Yeah. One price at the end. It's just like buying a resale home. When the house is completed on closing date, you just pay in full at that point. You don't pay anything until that point. A deposit in most cases, but that could be a matter that wouldn't amount to even the down payment that you've saved. Yeah. So as a turnkey builder, we know we handle every aspect of it. And when I started as a home builder, I just started. I don't come from any construction background, or I didn't have any family members or anyone that was kind of showing me the ropes. I just figured it out as I went. So because I had to figure it out as I went, I know every aspect of it. Yeah. Because I had to know, right? I mean, there were years where I was the guy sweeping out the houses and meeting all the tradespeople on site and plowing the driveway, everything. I did everything.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not a carpenter by trade. Like I would, so for instance, you mentioned about how important is it to have the skills or something. Like I would never frame my own house.
Really?
I would never frame my own garage for that matter.
Oh, it's easy.
I know. It's like I could do it, but at the same time, my brain works a little differently now. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. I could get a buddy to come over, and the slab foundation is in, and so he and I could frame this thing up, and between a couple weekends we'll get it sheeted in and be done. Or I could call my guy, and in 8 hours they'll have the whole thing done, and then on Sunday I can start moving stuff into it.
Yeah.
Right. We built a.
I think that's a difference in liquidity, though. Like I don't have the
sure,
financial.
Yeah, sure it is. Sure it is. Right. Sure it is. That, yeah, absolutely. That makes a difference. But time is money.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to, your time's valuable too. So you got to factor that. I learned that years ago. I one of the first things I learned when I was back doing everything, I was the everything guy, and I started to, I had to hire my first employee and start to not do it all. One of the things you realize is that if you want to make more than $20 an hour, you got to stop doing $20 an hour work.
Yeah.
Right. You got to hire somebody else to do that so that you can go do $50 an hour work. And so, yeah, liquidity would definitely have something to do with it. Sure.
Yeah. I'm looking at the fact that I've got my full-time job and I can't extend the hours on that. Right. So there's no way I can make more in that job. I'm stuck at my salary, but on my off hours, I'm like, that's opportunity time. So
for sure.
But it is like you said, am I taking advantage of the most opportunity?
Right.
And like one of the things could be like, am I putting out more content with Josh on the Elev8 podcast, which brings in revenue?
Yeah.
Or am I spending that time building a wall?
Right.
Or looking at I'm looking at putting in a kind of a hung ceiling. I don't know if you've ever heard those embassy ceilings.
Okay.
It's kind of like a hung ceiling, but they click in instead of being wired. And I'm looking at that going, man, I don't want to do that. Yeah. I really don't want to put that ceiling up. And because the family room that I've got is like 28 by 18, I think. And so I'm looking, and then there's a beam that runs in the middle of it. And I'm like, man, I have to get the laser level out and have to put it all. I was like, I just really don't want to do that.
Yeah, there are certain things that I would choose to do. Like if I had to decide certain aspects that I would do in the house, if I got to a point where I had to be on site working, painting is not something I'd be doing. I can assure you that. I would either be, I'd jump on with the guys and I would either be like trimming a house, or believe it or not, I would probably actually more likely than that, I would go outside and I would probably run the excavator or something like that. Kind of stuff is, I can run any piece of machinery. Just show me the controls and give me half an hour and take it from there. But not painting is one of those things that I definitely, or any of those little things like you just mentioned. I'm like, what you're describing there to me, I feel you. I wouldn't be doing that either. I would sooner like give me a shovel and send me outside and say, listen, man, I need you to dig 24 holes. To plant trees. Yeah. Fine. You paint, I'll dig the holes. We'll call it even.
So my wife and I have a deal like that a little bit where I don't have the patience to crack fill. Mm-hmm. I just, for whatever reason, my brain doesn't work that way.
Sure.
I can analyze 1,000 journal articles and write you a whole synthesis on, some new drug in healthcare.
Sure.
It's like, but to put mud on the wall and make it smooth, it just does not work in my brain.
No.
And so I get the walls to the point where she can do it, and she just comes in. She's so detail oriented that just every stroke is perfect, and it's just minimal sanding. So I'm like, okay, I'll do everything else.
That's
just
good.
Please put the mud on the wall.
Yeah, that's good, man.
So we got a good system like that. And it's funny because you were saying about being handy, and I got asked by a couple of my coworkers, because like we're white collar job, and they're like, how do you, I was like, oh yeah, I spent the long weekend running a chainsaw. And they're like, how do you know how to do all these things? And I was like, grew up poor.
Right. Right.
I grew up in rural New Brunswick, and we didn't have anything. Like mom and dad did the best that they could with what they had. And they were very young when they had me. So it was like, you do or die.
That's right.
And if you want nice things, you got to work hard for those nice things. Exactly. And you got to learn how to do it.
Exactly. Like every year, it never fails. This time of year, I'll be outside doing something in the yard, some heavy lifting type stuff. And my wife also likes to be outside. We like to kind of literally get our hands dirty. We're kind of outdoorsy, gardening types, landscape type. And same thing. I'll run the saw for the day, and a real good workout. It's
Oh
like,
yeah.
it's a really good workout.
Came in
right?
soaked.
Oh, you're so it's like
Yeah.
it's like you finished playing a hockey game. You're just
Exactly.
you're literally dripping, right?
Yeah.
I always say that. I'm always like, I mean, every time it happens, I'll come inside. My wife's like, oh my God, did you jump in the lake? No, this is just what happens when you run a saw, right? I love running a chainsaw, but I don't like being in a hurry. It's not something you want to be like rushed for. I got some stuff to do. I got 4 hours. I'm going to go out there and kind of just hobby around and run the saw. But when it comes to being handy, I agree with you. I think that's why part of why I know how to do things is that, like you, I grew up surrounded by people who had to do it. If there was something to be done, you had to do it yourself. And so therefore you learn how to do it, because by the time you're 10 years old, you are doing it.
Yeah.
You're out there, you are physically out there. You know, when I was 12 or 13 years old, you know, by then, at that point, I was splitting wood and junking the hardwood and then piling it up for the winter. And it didn't matter what it was. You had to do it. Now, my parents weren't kind of throwing a chainsaw at us when we were 8 years old, but
no,
they were safe about it. But when I was 10 years old, I was pushing a lawnmower and carrying a gas can up the street and mowing lawns for my neighbors. So yeah, you just learn how to do those things.
I think though, to kind of like bring it back to politics again, I think that's what's the biggest barrier for me though, is I'm looking at all this and, you know, before it was, you had the ability to do some of these, to learn some of these things. And that, you know, if you wanted to make a change to the front of your house and put a deck on or something like that, that you didn't need 50 permits and an inspector and all these things. And I think that, like, to me, it's that's kind of created almost like learned helplessness, where it doesn't make sense for you to figure out how to do for yourself. That's because, you know, you're not going to be allowed to do it anyway. And then you've got some neighbor that would rat on you and call the city, and then they come in and tell you have to take down whatever you built or pay some kind of fine or something like that. So to me, I look at these problems and I go, I think it's a supply issue, but before the supply issue, I think it's like what you kind of talked about before, about a labor issue. And before that, I think it's like an education issue. And before that, I think it's a legislation issue, because I think that if you took some of those legislative barriers out so that people who are eager, keen, smart could then access the proper education to then become skilled, to then build for themselves or work for, like, you look at like how Alberta became so prosperous and how they did things. They invested so much in young people and in their education, in apprenticeship programs and things like that. So that if you're a young person and you go, I want to build things or I want to do things in the trades, I can go to Alberta and somebody will pay me for my time to learn. I'll be able to access EI easier. Like, that's what happened to my friends. They all went out there, they got their trade because they couldn't get in Nova Scotia, went out to Alberta, got their trade, and then came back after with their trade and were able to work here. And like, we need to stop that in between process.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And I think
I've seen a number of people do that.
You're right. And I think that to me is the problem there, is like, it's that legislative bit, you know, that's making it so hard for people to do for themselves or get educated or get the skills or access that it's making it almost impossible for people to, it's like pretty soon it's going to be like, oh, well, you need to have the lawn cutting permit before you can cut your lawn, and you can't cut your lawn. You actually have to have the lawn services engineer come in from XYZ company to come cut your lawn according to the bylaws and standards of the residents that you live. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm seeing things go in that direction. I'm like, we almost need to like pull that back and go, okay, what is absolutely necessary for safety and what is necessary for like integrity of a home or whatever the process is. And then, you know, strip it back to that min spec, because I think that we've just kind of, we've overbuilt everything and over legislated everything to the point where it's insane. Yeah. And the other thing that happens, you know, obviously when it comes to permits, and the big reason why you have to get a permit for everything, the way it works is anything over $5,000 worth of work here in this municipality, anything structural. I mean, they have some different criteria, but at the end of the day, the main reason for that is because once you've applied for a permit to do some work and they ask you, oh, how much is this project going to cost? And you estimated, oh, it's going to be $50,000. Well, guess what? Next year when your property tax assessment comes in, it's going to be 50 grand higher than it was the year before. It's going to be higher in some degree. So it's a way for them to make sure that they are capturing all of the property investment, you know, and all the property value increases as they go on, right? So if you spend, like, for instance, you get a building permit to build a garage in your backyard.
and that adds $50,000 to the value of your home. Well, they want to make sure that you're paying tax on it.
Oh yeah.
Right.
And it's interesting because like one of the things I find people on the left say, because when we talk about like things like the carbon tax, and like it's a disincentive to use carbon.
Right.
Okay. It's like, well, then what is all these taxes on development then? That's a disincentive to develop.
Yeah, it's a good point.
And so when I look at this, you almost have to apply the same logic everywhere. And so, you know, like what you're saying about property taxes going up and things like that, I know why it's going up. They're going up because they need to find a way to fund
that's right.
everything that we,
of course,
everything that we have.
Yeah.
But the problem is that it's like you can't almost take things in isolation. You have to realize, okay, well, maybe we should actually get on board with the uranium exploration so that we can get some revenues off of that. So we're not needing to jack up the property tax so that then people can actually build homes.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like everything's connected, and it's like, and maybe if you lower the property tax on things, then maybe you'd entice people to stay, and then you'd have better services because you have more density, and then that would attract more doctors because they want to come. Like, you know what I mean? It's like nothing's ever in isolation, but what does kind of all flow back to, it's like over regulating and over complicating things that don't need to be complicated, such that I find like it's almost like this paternalistic view on life where it's like we need to control every aspect,
right?
Such that we've controlled so much that we're squashing the innovation, that we're squashing the ingenuity and the ability for people to do for themselves. Yeah,
and when you get to the level where you're talking to actual planners and folks at, say, the municipal level, like they're all very nice people and they're all smart, and they like, it's not like you can pinpoint any one person where it all hangs up, right? It's just not that easy. It's even when I meet the different politicians and counselors and so on, you meet them, it's very nice people. They're got a brain in their head and so on, but it's like, but then as you meet these different folks and you realize they're all part of the bigger picture, and you think, well, how can all these smart people who at an individual level, they get it? So what's going on here? Like nobody makes the argument the other way. I guess what I'm saying is nobody takes what you just said and says, I don't know about that, man. I think there should be more bureaucracy, and I think there should be more legislation. We should really be strict with the permits. Like nobody's making the argument for how they're doing it, and everyone's arguing against how we do it. So it's kind of like, why are we still doing it that way?
Well, it's what you just said there. It's like all these smart individuals,
right?
Like I see that in my own work, in other things that I've done. Like I sat on a couple different boards, and I'm trying to remember one of the roles that I had previously was basically looking at all the charities and nonprofits in Nova Scotia, and there's over 7,000 of them, which is kind of a lot for a population of only 1 million. And like there's folks that are doing the same thing here, there, and everywhere, and nobody's talking to each other. And it's the same thing within these legislative bodies. Like you said, really kind, good, smart individuals. And one guy is saying, well, you know, we need to build it this way, and is not taking into consideration like, okay, what are the spillover effects into everywhere else?
Right.
And so I think it's kind of what I was saying before, where it almost seems like that meme or graph where it's like the guy with all the pins and the map and the string in between them. But it is, you know, you need to actually have folks that are navigating this from a systems level to say, okay, you know, maybe we don't need this much frontage on a road. And even though the planner is saying, well, you know, to make best use of this, we should have 200 meters of road frontage. It's like, you know what? Maybe in some instances that would be ideal. But right now we need, you know, houses because this charity over here is struggling to keep people in beds, and we just need to.
That's right.
So I think that everybody is very well versed in their expertise, but nobody's really kind of doing that cross pollination of, okay, well, where are the gaps and where are the issues that exist across the system, and it's so siloed.
Exactly. We apply that to housing and the fact that we need so much more of it, but nobody's communicating. There's no communication internally as to how to do that. Everybody's screaming about the fact that we need more housing and more affordable housing. We all agree. And there's this weird narrative that somehow the only reason we don't have that is that the builders can't build it fast enough. So we're going to go to they're going to go to modular homes, for instance, and that's going to be the answer. That's a topic for another day. Don't get me started on that. But my point is, and I agree with you 100%. It's like, but nobody is pulling it together and communicating all. Like for me, I look at this as when it comes to the housing, if what you're telling me is when it comes to social housing, so set aside, you have to take the people who want to buy houses and set them aside for a minute. If you're talking about housing the unhoused, because that's not what we're talking about. So set the people aside who want home ownership, and they want it the traditional way. They want to sort of pay their own way through life and own their home and pay their rent and so on. Yeah. Then you have those who need some help. So if we focus first on those most in need, and we talk some form of subsidized housing, then you need to start communicating what it is that you need to the people who can provide it. All kinds of smart, competent people out there who are even in agreement, but nobody is pulling it all together. I look at it like if you were trying to get a house built and we had a set of plans sitting on the table, and I had in my phone a phone number for every tradesperson I had to buy and put on that job site. We have all the information and we can do it. But if somebody doesn't pull all those folks together and coordinate that project, it will never happen. And so nobody's doing that. And at the high level, at sort of the housing minister level, for instance, I guess it boils down to, I look at it, I just see this as there's absolutely no reason why this shouldn't be happening. If you're telling me we have the money, we being the province or whoever's paying for it, right? Mm-hmm. If the money is available, and we've all been told the land is available, and I would agree that it is, those are the only two barriers that would keep me from building something: the funding and the land. Everything else, myself and any other home builder can manage. So if we have the money and we have the land and we have the will to do it and everybody wants it done, then why isn't it happening? And it's because nobody's really pulling it together and communicating with all of the interested parties that have to be in on the mix.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of like the narrative for each facet of government.
You'd see the same thing in healthcare.
It's the same thing in health.
That's right.
Because, you have the Nova Scotia Health Organization, we have the Department of Health and Wellness, you have seniors long-term care, mental health and addiction, like so many buckets which are necessary, but it's like, who's the coordinator? Then
it gets even one more level of complexity. If you start talking about, say, housing that involves some sort of bolt-on social services, now you're trying to coordinate the housing, construction sector with social services. Now it's getting even more complicated, but somebody has to pull it together. And at the end of the day, that could boil down to, it's at least at a project level, that could boil down to there being a person, literally a man or woman, that has to pull this thing together and make sure that it gets done and all the right people get involved.
And I'll tell you why that's not happening. And I think it's because of the risk-adverse nature of the place that we live and grew up in.
Sure.
For whatever reason, and I know this because of people who've come in and gone and folks who lived other places, they're like, everyone is so risk-adverse. Mm-hmm. In these provinces, in Nova Scotia, PEI, and New Brunswick. And I'm seeing it in my own work. I see it in the work that I do on the side, and even in some of the places where I volunteer. Nobody wants to be that person that is responsible at the end of the day in case something goes wrong. And even the politicians, they certainly don't want to hold responsibility.
I agree.
On a project that could be so beneficial for the province and so beneficial for the community. But if for the odd instance something went wrong or something went over budget or whatever, they don't want to hold that responsibility because they know that like the media will eat them up.
Sure.
And so they're like, they don't do anything.
Right. So you're hitting on exactly what I was saying. So to get around that, you need to make sure that people in that position are willing to take the risk and take the responsibility. So, so when you hire someone for that role, they go into it eyes wide open knowing that, hey, listen, if you don't pull this off, you're going to wear it. And that's every day in my world. So bring it on.
And the other thing too is that it needs to have some actual measures and accountability put out there.
Agreed.
Because that's my bread and butter is evaluation. So it's like if you have a publicly facing system that says this is what we're working on, and it's not some document that's 300 pages long and sits on a shelf somewhere. It's like a very easily accessible dashboard. It's like healthcare. Here's the things that we're going to deliver on. Housing. Here's the things we're going to deliver on. Education. Here's the targets we're going to meet. 50% of the population has to be functionally literate.
Right.
Which to me, like literacy levels in Atlantic Canada are also a whole other thing we go down. But you know what I mean? Like some of these targets and make it easily accessible, easily understandable, so that anybody who's looking at it can go, okay, well, and who's the minister associated with each one of these? Why are we not progressing on this?
That's right.
And when Tim Houston came in to healthcare and he said, we're going to fix healthcare, they laid out a whole framework of here's all the places we're going to work on it in and who's responsible. He had a room full of people and they didn't leave until everybody had accountability.
Right.
And that's why healthcare is actually improving in the province. And like, you need to do that with every sector.
Sure.
But the problem, like I said, nobody wants to wear the risk. And nobody wants to put an evaluation like matrix to it because they don't want to draw attention to it. They don't want it to be seen.
Sure, yeah.
Because if you look at it and you're like, ooh, this is really bad.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So
yeah, that's good. Well, this is good, man. We could, I appreciate the conversation. There's lots we could come back to someday. Maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, appreciate it. I know you're getting ready to head out here. So thanks for your time and we'll do it again.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Man.
Appreciate it.
Take care.